before we proceed, the member for Angleton, I think you were at the table. Order that the documents do be brought up.
Thank you.
Order that the documents do lie on the table. As many. The chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town. The chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
Yes, Mr. Deputy, but I had the floor.
The chair recognizes, the chair will recognize the member for Bamboo Town. Can you please?
We suspended.
The member was on the floor when we
When two or more members rise, the speaker or the chair may call upon the member who, in his opinion, first rose in his place. As the chair, the member recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Chair.
Please, Pine Ridge, please.
Mr. Chair.
The chair will recognize all members if and when the appropriate time comes. The chair now recognizes the member for Bamboo Town. Please be seated, Pine Ridge. Thank you. The chair recognizes Bamboo Town.
Lord of life, King of creation, from eternity to eternity, you alone are God, and you are good. You do all things well, and I thank you. I hadn't intended to start with all of that, but I thought it was instructive so I can center myself. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, I rise on behalf of the good people of Bamboo Town who saw fit to send me to this place for a second time. I came in under one banner, and they sent me in here under another. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg leave to move the following amendment to the resolution. After the first words, whereas, delete all the words that follow, and I want you to substitute the following. The Member of Parliament for Nassau Village, the Honorable Halson Moultrie, has since his election as the 54th Speaker of this Honorable House on the 24th of May 2017, restored the honor, dignity, and respect due to the high office of Speaker of this Honorable House. And whereas the Honorable Mr. Speaker, in the conduct of the business of this Honorable House over the past 8.5 months has consistently displayed fairness, judicious deliberation, even-handedness, and a firm determination to uphold the high standards of conduct and decorum on the part of each honorable member of this House without regard as to which side of the House the member supports. And whereas in the determination of every dispute referred to him for the decision, he has interpreted the rules of the House generously and in a manner consistent with the historic rights and privileges of members of the House, having due regard to the rights of the minority party to the principles of natural justice and democratic values. And whereas on the 31st of January 2013, the Honorable Speaker responded 2018, the Honorable Speaker responded to the repeated disruption and disrespect to the chair displayed by the Honorable Member of Parliament for Engliston by naming the said member. And at a subsequent meeting on the 7th of February 2018, the Honorable Speaker, faced with the apparent persistent disrespect for the chair by the Honorable Members of Parliament for Cat Island, Rumkey and Sansal, Exuma and Ragged Island, Central and South Andros, who refused to take their seats and remain standing in open defiance by suspending the said members for 2 sittings of the Honorable House. And whereas the complaints of the Honorable Member of Parliament for Engliston could well have been made at an appropriate time and in a manner in which, while disagreeing with the Speaker, nonetheless could have shown respect for the chair and the high office of Speaker, and at the latter meeting, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Cat Island, Rumkey and Sansal, Exuma and Ragged Island, and Central and South Andros could similarly have registered their disapproval of the Speaker's order after having taken their respective seats and rising at appropriate time to express any reservations or concerns in a respectful manner to be expected of members of this honorable House. And whereas the consistent disrespect shown to the chair and to the honorable Speaker in this place, coupled with the personal attack and aspersions cast in a press release outside of this place, provoked a response by the Speaker. And whereas the ruling of the honorable Speaker to maintain order and respect for the chair and due order in parliamentary debates and exchanges of views is directly supported by the weighty precedents and authority recited in Erskine May's parliamentary procedures. And recalling that members of the opposite side displayed flagrant disregard for the rules of the House and the ruling made by the honorable Speaker in an unparliamentary display of arguing and constantly interrupting the Speaker on the one hand, and standing in open defiance of the Speaker's ruling on the other hand, contrary to the rules of the House and established parliamentary practice, and thereby sought to disrupt the House when they could not dissuade, to distract when they could not dictate, and to distort the record of the proceedings of the House when they could not defend their own record. Now be it therefore resolved that this House has confidence in the Speaker, the Honorable Halson Moultrie, and that he, after this debate, be invited to resume his chair. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, it is momentous and noteworthy that on this day, there are two things I want us to recognize. Firstly, today is Ash Wednesday, which signals the beginning of the 40-day period of the Church's sacred calendar, where we recognize God, the ultimate authority who exists in unlimited time and unlimited space. He says, from eternity to eternity, I am God. God entered our four-dimensional world of limited time and limited space to reassert his authority. We acknowledge that in this place. Every time we meet, we pray the Lord's Prayer saying, your will be done in earth, limited time and space, as it is done in heaven, limitless time and limitless space. Second, Mr. Deputy Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Deputy Speaker, today is Valentine's Day, and we recognize that most powerful of entities, love. Love that drives our positive energies and emotions. And Mr. Chair, Mr. Deputy, I believe all of us are driven by that one entity in what we do in this place. I believe, Mr. Chair, that all of us here in politics have an abiding love for the Bahamian people and their well-being. Mr. Chair, I firmly believe that. So, Mr. Chair, understanding all of this, Christ's assertion of his authority and love in this world, in regards to this motion and coming vote, I want to ask three questions. The first, how did we get here? What is the results of us being here? And more importantly, how do we get from here? Mr. Deputy Chair, Mr. Chair, Deputy Speaker, I would say it started with a flippant and flagrant disregard and disrespect for the established authority in this honorable House. I would say that. The side opposite would say, we got here by an act of civil disobedience. Not a trip to the bathroom. In fact, according to the chairman of the side opposite, the chairman of the PLP, the act of civil disobedience in this parliament was planned. It was planned and orchestrated with the intent of getting the government to overreact, thereby giving the opposition a cause to grandstand and to derail the people's agenda. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, I want to quote from their chairman in this one instance. We can take their chairman's advice. You know, last night he gave some other advice. We ain't gonna take that in one press release. But we can take this advice. So I want to quote from the opposition's chairman. What happened this morning was a classic case. House of Assembly, I want to start over because I want you to hear me, and I want the Bahamian people to hear me. I want you to listen to the quote that I've adopted that came from their chairman. What has happened this morning was a classic case of civil disobedience at its best, because the authority of the country has been provoked to do something stupid. ... But I say it is a classic civil rights experience. Civil disobedience experience. And you will know that in the days of Martin Luther King Jr. and in the days of Mahatma Gandhi, the whole point of civil disobedience is to use non-violent methods to provoke the authority to do something which is extreme, to overplay their hand, and thus prick the moral conscience of the nation at large. And so this minority PLP that they so despise was able to knock them completely off their track today. Their legislative agenda is now knocked off track. And they are spending time on something which they could have dealt with easily. Simply move on. But instead, filled with their hubris, they are now delaying the country's business because they want to express vengeance. And again, since they know the Bible so well, they should know that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. That's the quote from the side opposite. So the question, how do we get here? The answer is an act of civil disobedience. What is the result of us being here? The legislative agenda of the government is stopped and derailed, and we are not doing the country's business according to the chairman of the side opposite. Oh, by the way, you know, the side opposite say we ain't got no agenda or no plan. But the chairman disagreed with that. He say, we off our agenda and we off our plan. They say it's derailed. But I think, based on the communication by the Honorable Prime Minister this morning, I think you should know that the government has been at work in our plan. Ain't nobody going to derail that. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, last question is, how do we get from here? Their Honorable Chairman gave us the answer too. He says, oh, it is easy. All we got to do is move on. And vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So we have in the actions of the members of the opposition an act of civil disobedience, which challenges, they would say, provoke the authority, the speaker, who reacts. They would say he overreacted. The result is, according to them, the people's business isn't being done. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, they say it's easily fixed, and today we're going to fix that. Mr. Deputy Chair, given all that has been said so far, why should we endure this one more day? One more house sitting, spinning around on this hamster wheel. You know, my Christian grandma would say, the devil is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Mr. Chair, we will not endure this one more day. We on this side will address this issue with a vote of confidence in the Speaker. We are going to move on. We are going to end this sad saga today. We are going to go back to the people's business in the people's house. Mr. Chair, we are going to take the advice from the chairman of the side opposite. He says it is easy, just move on and leave vengeance to the Lord. House of Assembly, I want you to go with me. I want you to say it with me. What did he say? It is easy. Just move on. Vengeance is, say it.
Can you speak to the chair, please?
With that, Mr. Deputy Chair, I will say, as the lawyers say in court, I rest my case.
As many as there, seconder, the chair recognizes the member for Pinewood.
Very good. Mr. Deputy. I rise by the grace of God for the good of Pinewood and our Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Deputy, I am on my feet to second and support this motion for the greater good and the expediency of the Bahamian people, for truth and democracy. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am fortunate to speak early on this matter and to set the tone for and on behalf of the supreme boss of this House, the Bahamian people. Not self, not party. Mr. Deputy, notwithstanding and acknowledging the hand of God, it is the Bahamian people, our bosses, that place us in this place and not we ourselves. We are here to do their good work, and we all serve at the pleasure of the Bahamian people in this place. Mr. Deputy, I've seen caricatures presented in this place of cartoons as public opinion. But the Bahamian people, our bosses, are not pleased nor fooled and will not allow this to stand any longer. And I must say to all of us, we all will be judged on a scheduled day by the Bahamian people on the words, our words, and our deeds in this place. Mr. Deputy, our boss is saying to us all, get back to work and waste not another day to the disadvantage of our Commonwealth. Our bosses have reviewed our files and have concluded that the matters leading up to this debate falls far short of the prime directive, which is selfless service in the public interest. It falls far short of that, Mr. Deputy. Yes. Our bosses, the Bahamian people, in encouraging us, reminds us all of the maxim of equity. Those who come to equity must come with clean hands. Those who seek equity must be equitable. I've heard words here this morning, words such as compounded wrong. So let me define what was just said about equity. As an example, could you imagine, Mr. Deputy, two individuals, genders not required, decide to rob a drug dealer? They did that successfully, and on their way home, one of the two decided to rob the other one of their share. Then the other one goes to court and filed a complaint that he was robbed by his cohort. The court will look at that and say, before you come before me, come with clean hands. It's the law of equity, sir. Our bosses, the Bahamian people, believes, and history have shown, that if any disputed party in this place, any member, even guilty of words like the unpardonable act, if any of them crosses the floor, they would be welcomed. They'll be forgiven. They'll be supported. This shows that we can all be divinely forgiving in our political interest. Therefore, the Bahamian people insist that we all be divinely forgiving in the public interest. If a matter hinders the prime directive, there is no excuse for the language I've been hearing around here. Because it's the same persons that they speak venom of, were to say, I'll join your side, they will find every reason to say how great they are. Let's be fair and truthful. Pinewoods has said before that character counts, and now adds that not only does character count, it is more important than brownie pounds. And we should get beyond that, sir. Finally, if a system fails at its own hands, it should be judged alone. But if other hands and factors are at play, then all hands must be judged. And if all hands must be partakers in a judgment, wisdom says, as to the judgment seat, don't go there. Mr. Deputy, as lawmakers, we all must show respect for the very law and order we prescribe to others. Always remembering that we are of the people, and I pray every day for the people. We're not better than the people. Mr. Deputy, Pinewood hopes that we can surprise our Bahamian people with a gift of exceptional, selfless leadership today. Let us on this Ash Wednesday restore a working House of Assembly. Pinewood is not encouraging anyone to join its view or its vote for the Speaker. However, Pinewood is discouraging unnecessary degradation of the people's business and waste of their productive time in this place anymore. No. Let's show our bosses, the Bahamian people, better than we can tell them. Show self-respect and that of others. Fight battles you could win, and above all, work for the public good. Pinewood will not waste the productive time of the Bahamian people with a long discourse and encourage the same from as many on this matter. We must get to the matter ASAP that are transformational and transformative to the life, lifestyle, and livelihood of my Bahamian people. None of us is above the Bahamian people. The good of the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is paramount. I support this motion, and I support having this house end with the good news that began this house, the work of the government for the lifestyle and the betterment of the Bahamian people. So Pinewood rest on that matter and encourage all of us as we second this motion and encourage all of us to move on, not in self-interest, but in the interest of the people. Pinewood seconds this motion.
Pinewood, for the record, Pinewood seconds the amended resolution. Pinewood seconds the amended.
Pinewood seconds the amended motion.
Oblige. As many.
As amended.
The chair recognizes the member for Pine Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. And thank you, colleagues, for permitting me this opportunity to speak, Mr. Deputy.
1 second. That's
An essay on criticism by Alexander Pope. I wish to extract from his writing, but before I conclude with his famous quote, let me first quantify his explanation. All people commit sin and make mistakes. God forgives them, and people are acting in a godlike divine way when they follow pursuit and forgive others. It is from this provocating rationale and thought that we have this famous quote by Alexander Pope: "To err is human, to forgive is divine." Mr. Deputy, once again I thank Almighty God for the privilege to pontificate, better yet, Mother, speak to, on behalf of the good and gracious people of Pine Ridge. Mr. Deputy, let me take this opportunity on a day where love is emphasized and proliferated nationally and globally to express a happy Valentine to the people of Pine Ridge and by extension the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Deputy, I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to wish my lovely wife, Tracy Monique, the love of my life, a very happy Valentine. We're committed to each other, and after so many years, we love being in the presence of each other. Mr. Deputy, I'm a part of that statistic that helped to make up the relationship reality in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Fortunate or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, where the marriage rate is almost equal to the divorce rate. There are just as many people in this country that are divorced as also married. It's unfortunate. Sometimes people marry too early, feel pressured to do so, especially if you're in the church. Or perhaps after marriage, they recognize that they're not compatible and they have less in common. They were simply in lust and not in love. And then you have a lot of people who are married by paper and ring but behind closed doors, they live divorced lives. Mr. Deputy, I said this to encourage those out there who are divorced and perhaps are considering remarriage to recognize that there is hope in finding the person that makes you happy. Mr. Deputy, despite me being a divorcee and remarried, Tracy Monique, whom I have a son with, makes me happy, and the evidence is seen in my demeanor and comfort in my daily life. Mr. Deputy, I represent the Pine Ridge constituency, a demographic grouping of our Bahamian society, the lower, middle, and upper middle class of our country. Therefore, knowing that they are not the upper echelons of our society, I avoid speaking to them by way of parable and diplomacy. My people whom I represent can be found in the cross-section of the majority of constituencies represented in this place. Mr. Deputy, I have a responsibility to speak to my constituents, not at them, not below them, not above them, but to them, so that by the time as I'm through speaking in and out of this place, there's no ambiguity or question about what I may or may not have said. Mr. Deputy, this has not been the best 2 weeks in and out of this place, and it is unpropitious that history will recall when it's said and done. This was not the best 2 weeks, and I'm referring to all of us. It's not been the best 2 weeks for the Speaker, the members of the governing party, and the opposition. People out there don't like what they've been seeing and hearing in here. Mr. Deputy, my profession and vocation was birthed from evangelism. An evangelist from the context of the church is often referred to as the messenger. Sir, I've always been operating in this place as the people's messenger, and I'm often ostracized for bringing the message because perhaps it's because of who the messenger is. It's high time that we stop trying to assassinate the messenger and start listening to the message from the people who sent us here in the first place. Mr. Deputy, we're here debating the occurrence of the last 2 weeks. But, sir, this reality, this really isn't about the last 2 weeks. This has more to do with the last 25 years. The Bahamian people have become fatigued and or tired of politicians and the way business have been conducted in and out of this place in the name of the people. When this high drama took place on the 7th of February, 2018, I was not in the precinct. I did not attend, but I watched attentively, and I too, like many Bahamians, became frustrated by my observations. How can an establishment that is to be so nationally high bring us to an all-time low? How does a place with supposedly honorable men and women display such dishonorable conduct? Mr. Deputy, the message the people are conveying is that they've seen this movie before. The cast might presently be different, but the plot, scenery, and performance are very vivid and familiar. Mr. Deputy, the people asked me to share some of the scenes from the last performance by another cast that reminded me of how my leader, who was once leader of the opposition, and how he had been named, and how members then sought to block the police from getting to him. They reminded me of another time when the entire opposition walked out of the House and they were not suspended by the then Speaker, and one of his members stayed behind in the person of Edison Key. They reminded me of how my present leader, who was once leader of the opposition, was always being bombarded, berated, and then the government, and that then government, as he was leader, they would always ask this question, right from this place: who's the leader? The man or the woman? Does it sound familiar? They reminded me how the then government would stick their chests out, bang on the desk, laugh at the opposition, and would always remind them, we have the numbers. Mr. Deputy, the Bahamian people were watching this movie from 2012 to 2017. It's now 2018, and the script is familiar. This is why the people are saying, same movie, different cast. Mr. Deputy, all of us in this honorable place know how that movie ended. That in and of itself should cause us, this government, to write an entirely different script. Let me ask another question, just to add to this movie. What are they saying about the opposition now that they didn't say about us 4.5 years ago? Things that make you go, And who's the government? The people of the Bahamas wish for us to elevate our speech and behavior in this place. They want maturity and consciousness from their representatives. A message from the people of Pine Ridge, by extension Grand Bahama and the Bahamas. The people are mad with the present opposition. That's why they are presently in opposition. Mr. Deputy.
Bamboo Chang.
Mr. Deputy Chair, we are at the 1 o'clock hour, and I'd like to move a motion that we continue beyond 1 to give the member an opportunity to finish his contribution.
It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House continue beyond 1 o'clock. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. It's carried. The business of the House will carry on beyond 1 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Government Leader. Thank you, House members. And I think I need to repeat that. Mr. Deputy, the message from the people of Pine Ridge, by extension Grand Bahama, the Bahamas, the people are mad with the present opposition. That's why they are presently in opposition. Mr. Deputy, while they are mad with the present opposition, resulting in them being where they are, the people of the Bahamas, supporters included, of our government, are highly disappointed in our performance or the lack thereof. Mr. Deputy, the revelation about this whole situation is they are no longer, please do not take my words out of context. The revelation about this whole situation is they are no longer as mad with the opposition as they are highly disappointed in us as a government. So you know what I'm saying? They're mad with them, but they're not as mad. And they're still waiting on us. Mr. Deputy, before my colleagues chew me to pieces for giving the message that is being permeated out there, beating me up for the truth, privately and publicly, does not change the perception or reality of what I'm saying.
Member for Pine Ridge, speaking to the chair.
Yes, sir, that's why I'm addressing you.
Yes, to the chair.
You say, Mr. Deputy, I just have a habit. I'm a preacher. I got to look around.
Speak to the chair.
You see, Mr. Deputy, the former Prime Minister, Hubert A. Ingram, used to say from this place, make laws you can live with when you are no longer in this place. Mr. Deputy, for me, my Christianity does not stop at the bar when I bow to the chair. My Christianity is a lifestyle. When I am no longer in this place, I want to be able to preach in any island and in any pulpit in this country, if I'm so moved to do so. So I must maintain my credibility and spiritual integrity while in this place. Too many come to this place believing life begins and ends in this place, and probably for some it does. Well, let me remind you, if you don't believe me, just in case you may have forgotten, which I don't think you have, the Bahamian people put us in, and the Bahamian people are the ones who will take us out. Mr. Deputy, through you, sir, let me take a moment to encourage my colleague from MyCal and the fellow pulpitarian. The member made a comment that offended many in this country. Yet before the sun went down, the member took an introspective view of the statement and deemed it necessary to apologize to the Bahamian people. I could only pray that they would graciously forgive the member, as the member was gracious in admitting no ill was meant towards the women and the people of our society. The member was magnanimous for doing so and ought to be commended and not castigated for the regret. Mr. Deputy, the Speaker has the arduous task of maintaining law and order in this chamber. Every member in this place look to the Speaker for protection while in this place. Mr. Speaker is expected to be impartial despite his partisan politics. Like most of us, the Speaker is a product of on-the-job training. Notwithstanding, the Speaker is the highest authority in this august body. Therefore, he's held to a higher standard. This is why I couldn't be Speaker or Deputy. I'm too much of a fighter for that. I'd rather be in the fight for the people rather than parting the fight for the people. It is what it is. Mr. Deputy, in this place, we all have responsibility to respect the chair. Moreover, when the chair feels disrespected, the chair must maintain a certain decorum. It's not always easy doing so, especially when you're dealing with different personalities, ideologies, and know-it-alls. Mr. Deputy, while the opposition is small in number, we must not give the appearance as if we are bullying them because of their size. Let me hasten to say, I'm not saying that we are, but we do not want the perception being perceived. Mr. Deputy, the opposition also has a responsibility to respect the rules and the chair. They too, that is the opposition, must recognize the position they hold today is the result of their immediate past performance. They would not want their supporters and Joe Public to believe that they are steeped in arrogance. Therefore, they can come into this place and behave in a manner they choose to without submitting themselves to the rules of this House. Mr. Deputy, as I said earlier, this has not been the best 2 weeks for the House and its members. Those opposite have brought a vote of no confidence against the Speaker today. It is unfortunate. We all got some mud on us in this last 2 weeks, and I, of course, especially today. Yet 2 wrongs never make it right. There needs to be today a spirit of reconciliation and forgiveness for things said on both sides. This is what the Bahamas really wants to see today on this Love Day. Mr. Deputy, The Bahamian people did not send us here for this, or to act in a manner in which we have been acting. The public expects more from us and of us. They want more of the people's business done in this parliament. Might I add, they want legislation coming out of this place that will improve their welfare, well-being, safety, environment, and regional jurisdiction. Mr. Deputy, through you, sir, members of the opposition, I understand what you're going, I understand what you're doing, and you have every parliamentary right to do so. I am sorry we had to come to this juncture. On behalf of the people of Pine Ridge, we are sorry for any ill will and offense you may have felt during these past 2 weeks, personal or otherwise. Pine Ridge also conveys the same sentiment to the Speaker of this honorable chamber, who may have felt provoked. Pine Ridge also sympathizes with persons who outside this place felt violated or attacked during these course of actions. Nevertheless, Pine Ridge feels that the end does not justify the means. We, Pine Ridge, are not prepared to advance the opposition motion vote of no confidence in the Speaker at this time. Pine Ridge would hope that this would be a learning experience where we all respect each other's office and the office we all hold. Mr. Deputy, may this place once again be a beacon of light for Bahamians everywhere to emulate. To err is human. To forgive is divine. May God bless this house and all that serve therein. God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Much obliged, Mr. Deputy.
As many. Chair recognizes the member for South Central Grand Andros. Chair recognizes the member for Bambootown.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that the House suspends until 3 p.m. today.
We have a second. Second. It's moved and seconded that the House do suspend until 3 p.m. today. As many that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The House stands suspended until 3 p.m. today. All right.